here at our friend's house. We've just been traveling for 26 solid hours. Where are we? Surprise, it's Mexico! The very first order of business is to go get tacos, then we are going to crash and we will catch you up in the morning. Well, a lot of the audio from our time in Mexico didn't turn out, so I'm going to re-record what I said and overlay it on top of some of the footage that I did manage to get. Those of you new to our channel may be surprised to hear that we're briefly in Mexico. Don't worry, we're not leaving Japan. We will be back home very soon, even before this video gets published. But those of you who've been following along from the very beginning, you already know this is a big step in our overall long-term plan. The time has finally come. The date has been in our calendar for over 4 years. It's time to pick up our Mexican Permanent Residency cards. The very short, condensed version of the story is, nearly 5 years ago, we decided to leave the U.S. We spent a lot of time considering both Mexico and Japan to rebuild our new and hopefully permanent home. We have a lot of love for both countries for many reasons. In 2021, we received Mexican temporary residency and drove across the border in our 2001 Toyota Camry. We spent 14 months living in Mexico as full-time traveling house and pet sitters, which gave us the amazing opportunity to see 21 Mexican states and make lots of new friends along the way. This whole time, Japan's borders were closed, but we were always working towards our big move across the sea. While in Mexico, we did lots of research, found our ideal location in Japan, found our visa pathway, and began the startup visa process with Immigrant City, and you know the rest. Again, that's a very simplified version of a much longer story. If you're curious, you can go back and watch my early videos. You might like to watch one called What We're Looking For in Mexico or Japan, Compare and Contrast. That's one of our most watched videos on this channel. And another good one is the recap of our time pet sitting. That one's called Mexico Data, House Sitting and Travel by the Numbers. When I scheduled this trip, I tried to make it as short as possible, but I was also worried about having 3 back-to-back flights through 3 countries and getting to our immigration appointment on time. The appointment has to happen within a very short time window, and it has to be made a long time in advance. So if we miss that appointment, we basically miss getting permanent residency forever. So I planned our first 2 days here to rest, eat tacos, and get used to the time zone difference. For most of the trip, we're staying in Puerto Vallarta with our friends Zach and Sandy. Right after we arrived in Mexico for the first time in 2021, we stayed at their wonderful casita property here for about 2 months to get our bearings and to get our temporary residency paperwork in order, before we started traveling full-time. This is our 3rd time staying with them, so it feels like a home away from home. We're happy to see their little dog Max and their kitty Manchas, and it's amazing to see all of the work that they've done over the last 3 years while we were in Japan. They've expanded greatly, all the plants have grown up, the garden looks amazing, and they've even added a little saltwater pool. I'll put the link to their rental listing for the next time you're in Puerto Vallarta. They're super nice folks, and we're really happy to have met them. All right, we are packing a little overnight bag. We're going to change our home base for 1 night. We're going to head a little bit north of here to a new location, so we are closer to the immigration office for our appointments tomorrow morning. Well, we have arrived at our hotel in Nuevo Nayarit the night before our immigration appointments, but as you can hear, I think what we're listening to is an exercise class. So the part of this video that I planned to film here in the hotel room, I think I'm going to have to do a little bit later.
Alright guys, the votes are in and we're headed to Fajita Republic for dinner.
Scorpion in the shower. Bonus.
I wonder if this little guy will satisfy our employee requirement. ¿Hablas japonés?
Okay, back to the immigration stuff. The two countries, Mexico and Japan, have very different immigration processes. We started the residency process for Mexico from the Mexican Embassy in the U.S., where we lived at the time in New Orleans. After providing some documents, we received an entry visa. That lets you enter Mexico for one time within the next 6 months. After that, you turn that into a temporary residency card when you cross the border and finish the process on the Mexico side. We completed that process in Puerto Vallarta, and we received 1-year temporary residency. That's the first step. Then, 1 year later, we renewed our temporary residency, at which point you almost always get 3 more years. We completed that process in Oaxaca, so that gave us a total of 4 years of Mexican temporary residency. Now, our 3-year renewal process was 2 years and 11 months ago. You can see where this is going. At the end of 4 years total of temporary residency, you return in person to a Mexican immigration office and apply for permanent residency. There is only a 30-day window that you can actually do this process, and it must be done from within Mexico. So, we've known since all the way back in 2021 that we would have to physically be in Mexico on this exact date in 2025. Fast forward to more recent times, and that explains how we were able to have the foresight to block off Benton Guesthouse reservation calendar, so we don't have any guests during our short time outside of Japan. I originally made all of November blocked off, but then when we finalized our flights and made our Mexico trip as short as possible, I opened the second half of November for guests after the date that we returned. And we're already almost fully booked for that second half of November. So we did lose out on 14 days of potentially good income, but that was a decision we had to make if we wanted to continue this long, nearly 5-year process of receiving Mexico permanent residency. Just a side note, because I know the inevitable question, as a short-term rental in Japan, we are not legally able to have anyone else host at our guest house on our behalf without going through the process of designating someone as a temporary manager. And it sounded too complicated for this trip, so we decided to not add that stress and paperwork to our lives at this time. This goes for both ryokan license rentals, which we are, and for minpaku rentals. The operating manager needs to be recorded with the licensing agency, even if the host is only leaving briefly. Just because I know y'all are always on the ball with good questions, I wanted to put this out there as to why we didn't ask someone to host for us on our behalf for the 2 weeks that we were outside of Japan.
All right, y'all, we did it. We are back from immigration, and we are honorary Mexicanos. Viva Mexico! It's hard to believe we were in and out of immigration in less than 90 minutes with Residencia Permanente. When your wife says you can have 1 beer, better make it 2 beers.
Well, now that the major logistics of this trip are over with the permanent residency, that's complete, we are going to go visit our other friends in Yalapa, which is a little village only accessible by water taxi. Well, Steve and Carla picked us up directly from the pier in Yalapa, where the water taxi drops you off, and their adorable house is just a few-minute walk from the beach, literally in the jungle. It really is an amazing place. So they live upstairs and the downstairs is a rental. And just like our other friends, these guys have spent the last 3 years that we've been in Japan improving this place, so it looks even better than the last time we saw it. It's feeling super cozy and comfortable and just the best place to relax for a weekend or a week the next time you find yourselves in Yalapa. The last time we were here, they were just putting some finishing touches on, but they've made many more improvements. You can tell they've worked really hard putting this together. They're probably just improving it all the time. This is our bedroom here. It really is just the beach and jungle right outside. I can't zoom in because I only brought my 50mm lens, but that's a pretty good size iguana making some noise out there on those roof tiles. All right, well, we're gonna go upstairs, which is where they live. They've got their own little house and amazing rooftop garden upstairs. Let's go say hi.
Good morning. This is our last day in Yalapa. We're going to go get some birria.
We have just returned from visiting our friends in Yalapa, and Evan and I couldn't help but notice a few parallels to village life in Yalapa and island life in Omishima. One of them is just the accessibility. So of course they're very different situations. Yalapa is a very small jungle village in Mexico, with Puerto Vallarta being the closest big city. And Omishima is a small semi-tropical island in Japan with accessibility by bridges north and south to Onomichi and Imabari. But the amount of time that it takes for a round trip and the cost of a round trip is about the same. So of course it's more convenient in our instance because we can take the bus or we can take our own little K-truck, and Yalapa has the cool factor of not having any cars in the village and only accessible by the water taxi boat. But just one interesting similarity. That was our third time in Yalapa, and of course we always enjoy visiting there. But now here we are back in Vallarta. We have a few days left, just under 2 days before we start our long journey home to Japan. Today we just have a few logistics to take care of. We got to see our friends Zach and Sandy, we got to see our friends Steve and Carla, and I haven't mentioned yet that we also got to see our friends for the first time in person, Edgar and Daniela. We've been talking with them for quite some time about a few different ideas that we have for a potential business partnership, bridging Mexico and Japan in various ways. The contents of this bag we're bringing back to Japan, and I'm just going to have to show you when we unpack, but there's some exciting things in here. Stay tuned for the unpacking in Japan. The contents of this bag might be part of one of many upcoming steps towards meeting our new Japan Business Manager visa requirements. I am totally aware that it doesn't really make sense to everyone on the surface level why we would continue to pursue permanent residency in Mexico when our plan is to live in Japan forever as long as the visa situation works out and we are allowed to do so. And I also have to say that I really did consider almost letting this date pass by without going to Mexico and losing out on that entire process. If we weren't in Mexico on this exact date that we've had in our calendar for over 4 years, we would not be able to receive permanent residency and we'd have to start over, and we probably would just never do that. I was thinking about not booking the flights, and then all the news happened with the new Japan Business Manager visa changes, and I suddenly felt the ground underneath my feet feel very uncertain. So one of the first things I did after hearing about the potential changes, doing some research and just sort of figuring out what we're going to do, one of the first things I did was book those flights to Mexico, because while this is not a fallback plan, because a fallback plan involves an actual plan and funds to move your life and restart again in Mexico. So Mexico is not our fallback plan because we've invested everything we have into our life in Japan, and we hope to continue working here in Japan and meet the new visa goals. But Mexico is our fallback country. And I mentioned earlier we have a lot of love for Mexico and Japan. It initially was sort of a tough decision deciding between the two countries to live in forever. For many reasons we did choose Japan, and we're still happy with that choice. But we are also very happy that now Mexico is a permanent other option. We want to end this video on a fun note, but we're also not going to thoroughly explain everything just yet. So Evie, why don't you tell us what's in the bag?
This is green coffee beans for a little side business we've been considering with a friend in Mexico. And this is our first shipment. This is of course for personal use only, but we're thinking about selling these green beans to roasters here in Japan. So it's nice, these are all sourced directly from the growers, and this is from Wilfredo in Oaxaca. You can see the little custom stamp there. We had to get it inspected at the quarantine station. So this coffee comes from a guy who has made it his life mission to travel all around Mexico and find the best coffee that that country has to offer. And now he just wants to find customers who are willing to pay top dollar or top yen for that coffee.
We couldn't fit a ton of these beautiful, colorful ceramics in our small carry-on suitcase, but we brought back just enough to set the scene for Benton Homestead's very first taco pop-up, which is going to take place on Omishima over the New Year holiday. Each region of Mexico has its own unique art style, so we have combined a few styles here, but the one thing they have in common is that they're all colorful. We got this coffee mug for holding silverware. These tiles are going to become coasters. Just a few little cups for holding sauces. And this is the ubiquitous cash tray that is used throughout Japan for taking payments. And of course we had to get one of these brightly colored tablecloths you can find all over the country. We'll see y'all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Videos are going to start coming out more regularly again than they have been the last few months. And we also have this month's live stream scheduled for this weekend. So we hope to see you there too.
Arriba!